Ist euch was aufgefallen?
Have you noticed something? How much Kraftwerk in the 80s, in the beginning of the 80s, that's from 1981, if I'm informed right, how much Kraftwerk already knew about our world today? Peter Meyer from from the Eco Association from Cologne will talk to you about Kraftwerk's Computerwelt and the NSA-Skandal. Applause, please. Hello. In 1981, Kraftwerk, the electronic pioneers, Kraftwerk published their 8th album, Computerwelt. The time of the generation of the album fell into a time where the time of the revolutionary time when the microchip was invented, so computers were smaller, punched cards were replaced through magnetic binders, people were spending their work time and their free time in front of computers. Artificial intelligence, like the HAL9000 from Stanley Kubrick's movie, did not seem like distant future, but very close indeed. And in the mid-70s, people started talking about the third technological revolution, next phase of evolution of industrialization. Today, just 40 years later, we are already talking about Industry 4.0. In 1978, the Spiegel titled whether the computer revolution is going to put us all out of jobs very soon. In 2018, the joblessness levels are lower than in the 80s. So the third technological revolution created lots of new jobs and tasks. We have system administrators, PHP developers, SEO experts, mechatronics, computer radiologists, internet politicians, social media managers, or even EDM DJs. And apparently people can even make a living by being influencers on Instagram. So looking into the future of the third industrial revolution, looking at robotics and artificial electron brains, it's already referenced by Kraftwerk's album Man Machine. The military has networked computers for the war games of the Cold War, and the following album, Computerwelt, Kraftwerk, talking about a world of computers connected to each other. The album was released in 1982, a few years before the German teletext system was brought online. So in the first instances, people could be sending text-based communication, so emails, first forms of online chat. You could also already do some online banking over BTX, and you could already book some travel at Deutsche Bahn or Lufthansa. And already the first e-commerce platforms by mail order businesses allowed us to shop from our home screens. And even the German government, German police was on the system. Police gave tips to prevent break-ins. Jobless people found some job offers, and so on and so on. So it remained quite behind expectations all in all. Instead of a million users as expected, there were only a few more than 60,000. But still, the early BTX users are still forming the backbone of digital society today. What we're calling the Internet today, the World Wide Web, is only around since 1991, 10 years after Kraftwerk's album was released. From BTX grew T-Online and barely crushed the 1 million users limit. And then soon the Internet was the future and everybody was in it. Shortly after the gold rush and the new economy started, and barely 40 years later, after the publishing of Computerwelt, we have all arrived in the cloud and we're part of the Web 2.0. Today, over 90% of German households have personal computers. The computer has become a fixture in daily life. It's not just in a home; it's also in socialized apartments, in kindergartens, and sometimes even our homes become computers of their own. The smart home. Computers are guiding the family van through the city, and we're connecting our Bluetooth smart assistants with our apartments. And even when we're outside, we're still part of the computational world because we always have our smartphones with a good LTE connection with us. At home, we spend most of our time, we spend 3 hours on average per day on the internet, mostly on entertainment pages. We watch cat videos on YouTube, harvest our digital vegetables and farmware, working for love on YouPorn, or maybe bet our entire wealth in online poker. We're looking at the latest sensational news in the Rainbow Press, download music illegally, and the computers have made our lives easier and more comfortable. We don't leave the house anymore because we can just have a Netflix marathon instead. We play tennis and bowling interactively on Wii's in our living rooms, and the biggest adventures we take part in from the comfort of our own homes and our own sofas. We're racing cars through stolen cars in San Francisco, we're flying through the galaxy, or we're looking for buried treasure in the Amazon. Instead of going to the museum, we're playing the Second World War in first-person perspective on the Xbox. We experience the medieval ages as part of a multiplayer fantasy role-playing game. 1981, a huge audience was watching the young Thomas Gottschalk moderating people in the studio playing Pong. Today, 20,000 people go to the Cologne Arena and watch people playing Schalke versus Werder Bremen on the PlayStations, and another hundreds of thousands are watching them playing that. People would rather play games than leafing through their morning papers, and this future was started back then in the 1970s, 1980s. Today, we're traveling with the Oculus Rift into distant places and distant realities. We're going under the earth and experience mining firsthand in VR. We see high-resolution photography of places we will never get to travel to, and use Google Street View to watch other people's gardens. Some fly to Barcelona with cheap tickets for €9, and thus make affordable Airbnb apartments that cause the local rents to rise and displace local populations. People created a parallel society of computers. Some of them find the love of their lives, others find people to eat them, like the cannibal of Rosenberg a few years ago. Others find the meaning of life in the depths of the internet, maybe trolling the Heise forums, or others, they believe in the flying spaghetti monster. Others go into a world of lies and hate and untruth and create a worldview full of alternative facts. And in the end, we get absurd cases where the internet makes intelligent people rather build a rocket to prove that the Earth is flat. Computerwelt is, the world of computers has also accelerated our lives 24/7 and on and on. We send emails around the world in a few seconds, whereas just a few years ago, a letter to America took several weeks to come back because we forgot the airmail sticker. We don't get the latest news on the radio, but they're pushed directly to the display of a pocket computer, and in a few years, the intelligent voice input saves us from looking for the right letters on the touchpad. We're streaming the photos of a schoolyard beatdown while on a transatlantic flight, just as well as the finishing goal of one of our favorite football teams. And all of this happens in real time. In real time, you can also speculate either on the stock market or place bets on the next Finnish ice hockey team. Today's speed translates to the physical world in a way that even Amazon is delivering stuff with drones within 2 hours of us ordering. Everybody can offer their services and wares on the internet, both the coffee grower from Colombia, as well as some small craftsman or craftswoman, the small whiskey manufacturer from Scotland, or the small record label from Neukölln. Today in Berlin-Mitte, there's more manufacturers than in the second industrial revolution, and they all have one thing in common: they're all betting on e-commerce. The e-commerce revenue in Germany in the last year was 73 billion euros, and today in Germany there's 35 million people working in front of computers, and that's with 45 million people in jobs overall. So it's a quote of about 80%, which means there's a computer in almost every single company. The little hairdresser is submitting their tax statements with the computer. The farmer can sleep in the morning because the pigs are fed automatically. The chimney sweeps can track the pollution statements directly digitally, and taxi drivers get all the get their patrons through apps. But one thing that they all have in common is they all have computers. It's unthinkable to have a company without a computer today, no matter how large or small your company is. The mechanic does not pop the hood as first order of business. No, they connect the computer to check and see whether your emission values were manipulated. And prostitution is not just happening in certain places you have to know, as people think about, but no, you just connect your webcam and you just surf the website. And this has changed the way we work. It has changed the way we do medicine. Medicine has arrived in a digital world. We can have our DNA checked on the internet. We can Google our symptoms to then easily discover when going to the doctor we're not going to die after all. We can shorten the waiting times with the free Wi-Fi in the waiting room. And in case the dentist did actually hurt, we just leave him a bad rating on Yelp. The fitness app is our smart fitness app reminds us that we should probably do more exercise, because otherwise our doctor will tell us that cholesterol is too high, which is then going to be digitally transmitted to the digital identity health identity card, and that means our health insurance premium will go up.
Computers operate as precisely on the heart. Computer tomography gives us real-time pictures of our brain, and laser medicine has helped us a lot as well. So on the other hand, hospitals have to close down for several days because of ransomware, and but our life expectancy is still on the rise, and that's thanks to modern computer medicine. We can also buy medicine on the internet, but this is something different than Kraftwerk imagined. But the modern wonders of the computer world, and we wouldn't have, without them, we wouldn't have gotten to know the rich prince from Nigeria, who would have wanted to give us his heritage. So The computer world is based on numbers and characters, and every video, every PowerPoint presentation, every computer program is based on numbers and characters. Data storage is infinite thanks to cloud computing, and lots of people will probably regret their youth sins in a couple of years. And right now, the algorithm often knows more than about than myself, and that is just to give us more better targeted advertising. Everything is basically just calculated with ones and zeros, but the internet is also based on people. People behind computer screens and keyboards. Half the humanity is on the internet, and 2/3 of the people own a mobile phone, and more than 2 billion people are on Facebook, and more than 2 billion videos are on YouTube. We write more email more than our most secret postcards. We upload naked pictures to the cloud, and
and that's why we really enjoy buying software and hardware full of faults, so we can later complain that our data is publicly available on the internet. We don't care about our privacy, but instead we get everything for free on the internet. And in 1981, we were whispering while the shower was running because there might be bugs in the home. Today, we invite the bugs into our living rooms and ask them to order pizza for us. That's the different facets of a computer world. Today we call this computer world the internet. We cannot imagine a world without the internet anymore, even though the smartphone is barely more than 10 years old. In 2020, we expect 25 billion connected devices as part of this computer world. In the future, everything will be connected, even the human themselves. The internet also has its downsides. The US are ruled by Twitter. Cyber criminals are making more revenue than drug lords, and a lot of people from the depths of the internet you probably wouldn't want to run into in real life. But I think it's also good that police is investigating the cyber world against arms trading, child pornography, bot networks, and just notifying some people that the hate commentary on Facebook does not apply in a vacuum of lawlessness. The end of the 70s, we were right at the beginning of cybercriminality, and a lot of this is Horst Herold, the leader of the German Federal Criminal Agency, and in a time that was very much dominated by terror, maybe as much as today's age, like the falling towers of the World Trade Center as a symbol of global terror. The abduction of Hans-Martin Schleyer was a stand-in for the terror of its time. Hans-Martin Schleyer was abducted from his apartment and was looking for ways to more quickly identify future victims of abduction. And the approach with the police was to not assume, that criminals and terrorists always pay their electricity bills in cash. And so they were looking for all the customers that paid their electricity bill in cash, which is, of course, neither illegal nor very special. Then these data were correlated with the data from the central population register. And in the end, you only had the intersection of people that paid in cash and that were not officially registered in the place they lived. And this was called Rasterfahndung, a kind of a sieve approach. And this data was used with also databases of students that got state benefits, data of people getting pensions, public health insurance, people out of jobs. And as you can see, digitalization in Germany is not new. It's around since the mid-70s, and without this early digitization, this form of investigations would not have been possible. The financial authorities are also sitting on a pile of data, just like the German Postal Service. And of course, these are all great data sets for police investigations. Today, the private successors of these companies are suing whether they have to store this data according to regulations or not. And they don't have to. There was just a ruling in that. The financial world was also already on internet in times of BTX, but it wasn't as easy for police to get onto that data because Germany still had the bank secrecy regulations. But then the public fear of terror and war led to the German privacy regulations in banking to be dropped. So this first kind of investigation in the 70s in Frankfurt was very successful. After sieving through all the data sets, there were only 2 people remaining, 1 drug dealer and the terrorist they were looking for. Horst Herold's success led to a large international spotlight because it was the first time that people approached, use a big data approach to gain criminal investigation success, and it was very successful indeed. The same approach was also used in the 80s. And was the word of the year in 1980. Until then, it was only used in very specific cases of concrete suspicions, and was then called a negative Rasterfahndung, so only with a very specific target. But 9/11 changed everything. 9/11 caused laws to change. Bugs were legalized, Trojans were developed, and that led to also in Germany, if you were part of a preventive police action, this big data sieving approach could be used even without any concrete suspicion, all to defend our freedom. 9/11 was basically a carte blanche for complete and total surveillance, not just in Germany, but all around the world. And very much at the forefront was the US with the help of the Brits. After the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union fell and was no longer around as an enemy, the doctrine was changed, and the spy tools that were established in the Cold War were then used at a large scale for economic espionage, also against allied countries like Germany. And this program was called Echelon. Echelon was the basis for a global scale surveillance of the computer world that at least after 9/11 knew no boundaries anymore and thought itself above the law. But there's one point that Kraftwerk was wrong about. It wasn't the police authorities, it wasn't the FBI and the German criminal agencies or Scotland Yard that are surveilling us. It's the secret services.
Geheimdienste, genau, die unsere Daten da haben.
That have our data. With the computer world, Kraftwerk was looking into the future. And looking in the year 1984, trying to warn us from abuses of our data in a computationalized world. And now it's up to us how we manage and control this world and shape this world, how we deal with the loss of privacy, how we deal with surveillance and the control of our data. With each new act of terror, we give up a part of our basic civil rights, including the secrecy of banks, and we will never get any of these back. And I'm painting a very bleak picture of the computer world, but all in all, I think the internet is a pretty good place. Back in the 80s, with BTX, phone booths, the Cold War, monochrome screens, and the music of modern talking, I don't want to go back to that, at least. So all that remains to be said is the musical pioneer work of some people in a Düsseldorf garage is today pop culture. The albums Man Machine and Computer World are now the basis for today's techno music, and the masterworks that have shaped the world of music in all eternity. Thank you.
Ich bin noch nicht fertig. Ich bin ja noch nicht fertig. Genau, und es gibt noch einen Song auf dem Album Computerwelt, der ein bisschen was vorausgesagt hat in der Zukunft. Der heißt nämlich Computerliebe und der handelt von Tindern und Parship.
And there's another thing where Kraftwerk actually predicted the future, and there was a song called Computerliebe, Computer Love, which is about Tinder and Parship. And now there should be music playing, and here we go. Thank you.
Wieso? Nee. Ich bin auch noch ein bisschen Leiter da drin. Gut, es sind aber mehr Leute rausgegangen als reingekommen.
Und einen Applaus bitte.
Be